shining in the self in all beings. We begin today's satsang with a prayer by Ashwini Balaji and Uma-Ashwini, followed by chanting of Muktaka trayam by Sri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. Dakshinamurti Sarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyaye Sarva Vignopashantaye Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarva Vagmayam Aharyam Chandrataradi Tam Namah Satvikam Shivam. Namo Ramana.
Ekam Aksharam Hruvi Nirantaram Bhasate Swayam Likyate Katham. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yaham Maham Iti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hrudi Vishamanasasvam Chivata Mujjata Pavana Chalanurudha Atmanishtu Bhavatam. Deham Brahmayavat Jadatmakam Aham Buddhirna Tasyastyatu Naham Tattata Bhava Shikti Samam Siddhatma Sadbhava Bhavayuta Kuto Aradhiya Drishtatmanishtatma Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Guru Vibhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Guru Vibhati Swayam. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We now have the chanting of verses from Upadesa Saram by Uma-Ashwini and Ashwini Balaji, and this will be followed by the offering of Ramananjali music. The first one would be Radha and the second would be Prathiba.
नमो रमण वायुरोधना लीयते मन जालपक्षिवद्रोदसादनं चित्तवायव चित्क्रियायुताः शाकयोर्द्वयी शक्तिमूलक लयविनाशने उभयरोधने लयगतं पुनर्भवति नोमृतम् प्राणबन्धनात् लीनमानस एकचिन्तना नाशमेत्यद नष्टमानसो उत्कृष्टयोगिन कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तितिं यदा दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मना चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्गार्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मन अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत ऐपतत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभाज्यहमहं तया स्फुरति स्वयं परमपूर्णस नमो रमण
Namo Ramana to all. Today I have selected Sri Sadhguru Swami's lyrics. The music is given by Srimati Sulochana Natarajan and the orchestra is by Sri K.S. Raghunathan. This is the Ragam Vijayanagari set to Aditara. ஆலடியாரும் மால்வடிவோரும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் வேலுடையாரும் வேதவனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் ஆலடியாரும் மால்வடிவோரும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் வேலுடையாரும் வேதவனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் இதுபோல் குருவாய் குருமோ தவம் ஏது புரிந்தாலும் இதுபோல் இனிமாய் குருமோ உலகேழில் அலைந்தாலும் இதுபோல் குருவாய் குருமோ தவம் ஏது புரிந்தாலும் இதுபோல் இனிமாய் குருமோ உலகேழில் அலைந்தாலும் புவனமெல்லாம் தொல் ஸ்ரீரமணன் புவனமெல்லாம் தொல் ஸ்ரீரமணன் புவன மகாகுரு ஸ்ரீரமணன் புவன மகாகுரு ஸ்ரீரமணன் ஆலடியாலும் மார்கடி போனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் வேலுடையானும் வேதவனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் உலகெல்லாம் ஒன்றாய் பிணைத்து விட்டான் உயிர்களை தாமா அணைத்து விட்டான் அழகெல்லாம் அருளால் நனைத்து விட்டான் அருணாச்சலத்தோடு இணைத்து விட்டான் உலகெல்லாம் ஒன்றாய் பிணைத்து விட்டான் உயிர்களை தாமா அணைத்து விட்டான் அழகில்லா அருளால் நனைத்து விட்டான் அருணாச்சலத்தோடு இணைத்து விட்டான் புவனம் எல்லாம் தோல் ஸ்ரீரமணன் புவனம் எல்லாம் தோல் ஸ்ரீரமணன் புவன மகாகுரு ஸ்ரீரமணன் புவன மகாகுரு ஸ்ரீரமணன் ஆலடியாலும் மார்கடி போனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் வேலுடையானும் வேதவனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் ஆலடியாலும் மார்கடி போனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் வேலுடையானும் வேதவனும் அவனே ஸ்ரீரமணன் ஸ்ரீரமணன் ஸ்ரீரமணன்
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This composition is from first two verses of 18th chapter of Ramana Gita by Sri Ganapati Muni in praise of Guru Ramana. He describes Bhagavan's birth in the lineage of great Vedic Rishi Parashara Gotra as very befitting, as Ramana was born to Immaculate Father Sundaram Iyer with the constant awareness of glory of Arunachala in his heart. He is Paramahamsa, ever abiding in the true state, living among men in an ashram only to guide in the inward journey out of great love for his devotees. वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवं वसुमती सुरसङ्घयशस्करं वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवं वसुमती सुरसङ्घयशस्करं वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवं वसुमती सुरसङ्घयशस्करं वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवं वसुमती सुरसङ्घयशस्करं वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवम् विमल सुंदर पंडित नंदनम विमल सुंदर पंडित नंदनम विमल सुंदर पंडित नंदनम विमल सुंदर पंडित नंदनम कमलपत्र विशाल विलोचनम कमलपत्र विशाल विलोचनम कमलपत्र विशाल विलोचनम कमलपत्र विशाल विलोचन पनिपसासानि पनिपरीरि सरि गमरि सनि सरि पमगम पदनि सरि रि सनि नि पमगमरि रि गम वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवं वसुमती सुरसङ्घयशस्करं वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवम् अरुणशैलगताश्रमवासिनं परमहंसम् अनञ्जनमच्युतम् अरुणशैलगताश्रमवासिनं परमहंसम् अनञ्जनमच्युतम् करुणया ददतं व्यवहारितां करुणया ददतं व्यवहारितां करुणया ददतं व्यवहारितां करुणया ददतं व्यवहारितां सततमात्मनि संस्थितमक्षरे सततमात्मनि संस्थितमक्षरे सततमात्मनि संस्थितमक्षरे सततमात्मनि संस्थितमक्षर पनिपसासानि पनिपरीरि सरि गमरि सनि सरि पमगम पदनि सरि रि सनि नि पमगमरि रि गम वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवं वसुमती सुरसङ्घयशस्करं वरपराशर गोत्रसमुद्भवम्
The next two Ramananjali musical sharings will be the first one by Savitri Krishnan and Jaisriram Krishnan, and the next one by Revathi Shankar.
நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ நாதா ரமணா, நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ நாதா ரமணா, ஞானம் மீதி மனம் போனாலே மெய் ஞானம் மீதி மனம் போனாலே நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ ரமணா, நானாரோவென நாடிடும் போதே நாடுவோன் மயம் நீ ஞானேஷ, நானாரோவென நாடிடும் போதே நாடுவோன் மயம் நீ ஞானேஷ, நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ நாதா ரமணா, ஞானம் நெய்தி மனம் போனாலே மெய் ஞானம் நெய்தி மனம் போனாலே நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ ரமணா. கருணையால் என்னை காக்கும் குருநீ, கதி வேறொன்றும் காணேனே. கருணையால் என்னை காக்கும் குருநீ, கதி வேறொன்றும் காணேனே. அருணை ஜோதி ரமணேஷா, நின் பேரருளினாலடிமையானேனே. அருணை ஜோதி ரமணேஷா, நின் பேரருளினாலடிமையானேனே. நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ நாதா ரமணா, ஞானம் மனம் போனாலே மெய் ஞானம் மீது மனம் போனாலே நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ ரமணா. மனம் இருந்த நிலை எய்திட என்னால் வல்லதோ சிறிதும் ஆகாதே. மனம் இருந்த நிலை எய்திட என்னால் வல்லதோ சிறிதும் ஆகாதே. தினம் இறைஞ்சும் என்னை திருவருள் நினைந்தால் சிறிதுமே சிரமம் ஆகாதே. தினம் இறைஞ்சும் என்னை திருவருள் நினைந்தால் சிறிதுமே சிரமம் ஆகாதே. நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ நாதா ரமணா, ஞானம் மீதி மனம் போனாலே மெய் ஞானம் மீதி மனம் போனாலே நான் என்னும் பொருள் நீ ரமணா. ஓம் நமோ பகவதி ஸ்ரீ.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the 25th verse of Saddarshanam. Rupodbhavo rupatati pratishto rupashano dhūta grihita rupaha swayam virupah swavicharakale धावत्यहङ्कारपिशाच एषः. Born of forms, rooted in forms, feeding on forms, ever changing its forms, itself formless, is ego ghost, takes to its heel on enquiry. Name, form, profession, gender, role in the society, relationships, what not? What all labels we have to describe ourselves? Sadly, none of these being myself. Bhagavan saves us from this Maya by giving us the Brahmastra, who am I? It stirs us from within to give us clarity by creating the whirlpool. When the strident of who am I is pierced into the flood of the non self, he makes us realize there is nothing apart from the self. The ego runs away. I present to you a song from one of our dance diaries, The Question, written by Dr. Sarada, music by Dr. Ambika Kameshwar. This is a conversation between Ramana and the devotee. ರಮಣನೆಡೆ ನಾ ಹೋಗಿದೆ ಮುಕ್ತಿಯನು ನಾ ಬೇಡಿದೆ ರಮಣನೆಡೆ ನಾ ಹೋಗಿದೆ ಮುಕ್ತಿಯನು ನಾ ಬೇಡಿದೆ ರಮಣ ಹೇಳಿದನು ಬೇಡುವುದು ಯಾರು ರಮಣ ಹೇಳಿದನು ಬೇಡುವುದು ಯಾರು ನೀನು ಯಾರು ನೀನು ಯಾರು ರಮಣನೆಡೆ ನಾ ಪೇಳಿದೆ ನಗುತ್ತಲೆ ಹೆಸರನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ ರಮಣನೆಡೆ ನಾ ಪೇಳಿದೆ ನಗುತ್ತಲೆ ಹೆಸರನು ಪೇಳಿದೆ ರಮಣ ಪೇಳಿದ ಅದು ಹೆಸರು ನಿನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ರಮಣ ಪೇಳಿದ ಅದು ಹೆಸರು ನಿನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಮುಕ್ತಿಯನೆಂದು ಬೇಡುವುದು ನಿನ್ನ ಹೆಸರೇ ನೀನು ಯಾರು ನೀನು ಯಾರು ಯೋಚಿಸಿ ವೃತ್ತಿಯ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಎನ್ನಯ ವೃತ್ತಿಯ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಯೋಚಿಸಿ ವೃತ್ತಿಯ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಎನ್ನಯ ವೃತ್ತಿಯ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ನರ್ತಕಿ ನಾ ನರ್ತಕಿ ನರ್ತಕಿ ನಾ ನರ್ತಕಿ ಅದು ನಿನ್ನ ವೃತ್ತಿ ಎಂದನು ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಮುಕ್ತಿಯನೀಗ ಬೇಡುವುದು ನಿನ್ನ ವೃತ್ತಿಯೇ ನೀನು ಯಾರು ನೀನು ಯಾರು ಮಾನವಿಯೆಂದೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ ಕರು ಎಂದ ಸ್ತ್ರೀ ಎಂದೇ ಅದು ನಿನ್ನಯ ಲಿಂಗ ಎಂದ ಮಾನವಿಯೆಂದೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ ಕರು ಎಂದ ಸ್ತ್ರೀ ಎಂದೇ ಅದು ನಿನ್ನಯ ಹೆಸರು ಲಿಂಗ ಎಂದ ನಿನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದು ಮುಕ್ತಿಯ ಪಡೆಯಲು ಬಯಸುವುದು ನೀನು ಯಾರು ನೀನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಹೆಸರಿಲ್ಲದಿರೇ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ರೂಪವಗೊಂಡ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಹೆಸರಿಲ್ಲದಿರೇ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ರೂಪವಗೊಂಡಿಹ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಉಸಿರನು ಅರಿಯುವ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಉಸಿರನು ಅರಿಯುವ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಂತನೆ ಅಲೆ ಅಲೆಯಾಗಿ ಎದ್ದು ಅಡಗುವ ಜಾಲವ ಕಾಣುವ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಉಸಿರನು ಅರಿಯುವ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಂತನೆ ಅಲೆ ಅಲೆಯಾಗಿ ಎದ್ದು ಅಡಗುವ ತಾಣವ ಕಾಣುವ ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಯಾರು ನಮೋ ರಮಣ
Namo Ramana. We now have the reading and the sharing by Sri Nandakumarji.
Namo Ramana. In this segment, the book reading segment of our satsang, we continue to read from the book Fresh Discoveries, Western Seekers on Sri Ramana Maharshi, compilation by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We have been reading the account of Mercedes de Acosta. She entitles the account as Here Lies the Art. She has been taking us through her visit to the ashram through Pondicherry and how she experiences that her friend has already come, Gai Heg, and she gets Bhagavan's sannidhi of the samadhi experience of Bhagavan, and Gai Heg says to her, be near Bhagavan when he opens his eyes, and she gets accustomed to the ashram activities, and mainly she asks Bhagavan, you are asking me to inquire, who are you? She asks. Bhagavan says, you know the self, then you will know everyone. And then comes the event where Bhagavan says that your destiny is not here now. There is going to be a revolution, which will be called as war. Everything is going to change. You are destined to be in the US. So Bhagavan blesses her with some verses from Yoga Vasishtam, and she is on her way to the US. I sorrowfully said farewell to Bhagavan. As I was leaving, he said, you will return here again. I wonder, since his physical presence has gone, I wonder if I shall. So the account has been written subsequent to 1950. Yet, often I feel the pull of Arunachala as though it were drawing me back. I feel the pull of that sacred hill of which he was so much a part, where his mortal body lies buried. Before leaving the ashram, I wrote down several questions for Gai Heg to ask Bhagavan that I had not had a chance to ask myself. I had been bothered by the fact that ill and suffering physically. I asked, should they not have perfect bodies, and why do they not cure themselves? In Europe, I got a letter from Guy saying he had discussed my question with Bhagavan. He wrote, Bhagavan told me to tell you that the spiritually perfect person need not necessarily have a perfect body. The reason, as he explained it, is very simple. You see, the ego, the body, and the mind are the same thing. A spiritually perfect person like Bhagavan is above these three things. Consequently, he has no body to heal, neither a mind or ego to heal it with. He is beyond all this because it is illusion. He is living in reality. Christian scientists can take the mind and heal the body, for they are the same thing. American Indians heal too in this manner. It is faith healing. But if the spiritually perfect person is sick in body, it is because the body is working out its karma. Bhagavan gave an illustration of karma, which he says is like an electric fan and must just run its course, only gradually ceasing even after it has been turned off. He says the mind is born into illusion and builds a body and a world to suit it. That is, a world that it has earned and deserves. Bhagavan, knowing the body and the mind to be illusion, cannot identify with any bodily ailment or discomfort. We make him suffer pain. It is our minds, not his. He is bodiless. Actually, though you and I cannot realize this as a fact, that is the reply that Guy Heg has given to Mercedes de Acosta. In another letter, Guy answered my questions, which led to others. He wrote down my questions and Bhagavan's answers. Question. Is reincarnation a fact? Bhagavan, you are incarnated now, aren't you? You feel you are incarnated in a body. Then you will be so again. But as the body is illusion, then the illusion will repeat itself and keep on repeating itself until you find the real self. Question. What is death and what is birth? Bhagavan, only the body has death and birth. It, the body, is illusion. There is in reality neither birth nor death. Question. How much time may elapse between death and rebirth? Bhagavan, perhaps one is reborn within a year, 3 years, or 1,000 years. Who can say? Anyway, what is time? Time does not exist. Question. When Bhagavan says time does not exist, the whole previous explanations go out of the window. That means there is no need to explain birth or rebirth unless this timeline is drawn. Anyway, what is time? Time does not exist. Question. Why have we no memory of past lives? Bhagavan, memory is a faculty of the mind and part of the illusion. Why do you want to remember other lives that are also illusions? If you abide within the self, there is no past or future and not even a present, since the self is out of time, timeless. Question. Are the world, the mind, ego and the body all the same thing? Bhagavan, yes, they are one and the same thing. The mind and the ego are one thing. But there is no word to explain this. You see, the world cannot exist without the mind. And the mind cannot exist without what we call the ego. And ego cannot exist without a body. So with that, the circle of Maya, it continues unless we break the circle by saying that ego is the starting point. Question. Then when we leave this body, that is when the ego leaves it, will the ego immediately grasp another body? The verse which Revathi had read, the verse number 25, which says, Urupatri undam, Urupatri nirkum, holding form, it will stand, Uruvittu Urupatru. Leaving one form, it will hold another. That is the question that is being asked. Then when we leave this body, that is when the ego leaves the body, will it immediately grasp another body? Bhagavan, oh yes, it must. It cannot exist without a body. Question, what sort of body will it grasp then? Bhagavan, either a physical body or a subtle mental body. Question, what causes us to be reborn? Bhagavan, desires. Your unfulfilled desires bring you back. And in each case, in each body, as your desires are fulfilled, you create new ones. You must conquer desire to be absorbed into the one and thus end rebirth. Question, can sex change in rebirth? Bhagavan, oh surely, we have all been both the sexes many times. Question, is it possible to sin? Bhagavan, having a body which creates illusion is the only sin. And the body is our only hell. But it is right that we observe moral laws. The discussion of sin is too difficult for a few lines. Question, does one who has realized the self lose the sense of I? Bhagavan, absolutely. Question, then to you, there is no difference between yourself, myself, that man over there, my servant, are all the same. Bhagavan, all are the same, including those monkeys. Daiheg seems to have asked these questions to Bhagavan, and the answers reflect that Bhagavan is referring to the situation there in the ashram, and that is being written to Mercedes D. Acosta. I'll read that question again. Then to you, to the jnani, there is no difference between yourself, myself, that man over there, my servant, are all the same. Bhagavan, all are the same, including those monkeys. Question. But monkeys are not people. Are they not different? Bhagavan, they are exactly the same as people. All are same in the one consciousness. All are the same in one consciousness. Question. Do we lose our individuality when we merge into the self? Do we lose our individuality when we merge into the self? Bhagavan. There is no individuality in the self. The self is one supreme. Question. Then individuality and identity are lost? Bhagavan. You don't retain them in deep sleep, do you? Bhagavan is saying, even in deep sleep, we don't retain them. In the talks, a similar line of questioning comes. And the questioner says, however, I have this experience that I will get up from sleep. I will be awake and I will see the same circumstances again. Bhagavan says that is the illusion, and you will have to cross that even without these upadis, you exist. Do we lose our individuality when we merge into the self? Bhagavan, there is no individuality in the self. There are no divisions as individuals or objects in that consciousness. It is akhanda. The self is one supreme. Question. Then individuality, identity are lost? Bhagavan, you don't retain them even in deep sleep. Do you? Question. But we retain them from one birth to another, don't we? Bhagavan, oh yes. The I thought, the ego, will recur again. Only each time you identify with a different body and different surroundings around the body. The effects of past acts, karma, will continue to control the new body just as they did the old one. It is karma that has given you this particular body and placed it in a particular family, race, sex, surroundings, and so forth. Bhagavan added, these questions are good, but tell D. Acosta, he always called me D. Acosta. He didn't call her Mercedes. He always called me D. Acosta. Tell D. Acosta, she must not become too intellectual about these things. It is better just to meditate and have no thought. Let the mind rest quietly on the self in the cave of the spiritual art. Soon, this resting will become natural, and then there will be no need for questions. Do not imagine that this means being inactive. Silence is the only real activity. Do not imagine that this resting in the heart means being inactive. Silence is the only real activity. Then Guy added, Bhagavan says to tell you that he sends you his blessings. This message greatly consoled me, comforted me. On my way back to Europe, my boat stopped at Port Said, that is in Egypt. I landed there and motored across the desert to Cairo, where I stayed 3 days and then caught the ship again when it docked in Alexandria. In Cairo, I stayed at the old famous Shepherd's Hotel. I spent 1 day in the museum, seeing the Tutankhamun collection, and the second day I rode out by camel to see the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. When I reached the pyramid, it was nearly sunset. There was no one around except my own dragoman and 1 or 2 Arabs sleeping against their kneeling camels. I decided to climb to the top of the pyramid. Although it towered above me, tapering off into the sky and looked terribly high, I did not realize how high it was until I started climbing. I started out briskly, but after a certain distance I grew tired and my pace slackened. The steps of the pyramid are very narrow and eroded, but I was determined to reach the top. Thoroughly exhausted, I finally did. The sun had already gone down. I turned and looked down the steep and awesome slope of the pyramid. Suddenly, I was overcome by the most frightful vertigo. Vertigo is the fear of heights. My head swam and I felt I was going to plunge to my death. I crouched on the narrow steps and clung to the top of the pyramid so fiercely that my nails broke against the stone and my fingers bled. I could not bring myself to look down again. An agonizing fear took hold of me. I felt cold sweat pouring over my face, neck and back. I became hysterical. What was I to do? I knew if I let go, I would fall. But I also knew I could not hold on much longer. I closed my eyes. I remembered what the Maharishi said, to dive deep into the spiritual heart. I summoned every faculty and all power within me and concentrated on the heart. Suddenly I saw it like a great light in my mind's eye. In the center of the heart, I saw the Maharishi's face smiling at me. Instantly, I felt calm. I turned and looked down. Far below, I saw a man waving at me. I loosened one hand and held it over my head. Then I waved back. The man began calling someone else. Another man ran to him. Swiftly, they began to climb. They climbed expertly and fast, but it seemed hours to me. Probably it took them about 35 minutes to reach the top, to reach me. One man had a rope. He tied it around my waist and gently stroked my face. He mumbled some words that I could not understand, but I knew they were kind words to encourage me. Between them, each one holding the rope as though we were mountain climbing, we began to descend. Eventually, we reached the bottom safely. I will read that portion where she is remembering Bhagavan. I felt cold sweat pouring over my face, neck and back. I became hysterical. What was I to do? I knew if I let go, I would fall. But I also knew I could not hold on much longer. I closed my eyes. I remembered what the Maharishi said, to dive deep into the spiritual heart. I summoned every faculty and all power within me and concentrated on the heart. Suddenly, I saw it like a great light in my mind's eye. In the center, I saw the Maharishi's face smiling at me. Instantly, I felt calm. Bhagavan is everywhere. He can arrange everything so that our consciousness dives deep. We don't dive deep until the situations come upon us. By ourselves, we are not able to dive deep. But in these situations, when the fear drives our mind deep, and when we remember Bhagavan, that becomes the deepest spiritual experience possible. It is totally Bhagavan's grace that at these times of great fear, that He comes to our aid and takes us and makes us sink in to the deepest of our spiritual experiences. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. To turn back to the spiritual heart, Bhagavan gives us the path of self-enquiry, and he comes to us in the form of self-enquiry, enabling us to practice when in the simpler, more natural situations, easier circumstances, so that when there are difficulties, the mind will have the strength to turn within, as it happened in the case of Mercedes de Acosta. We now have a session of self-enquiry guided by Dileep Simha.
Namo Ramana. Dhyayet Varadamukam Takshanam Svatmanandarasānubhūti Sarvanavadhyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram. Namo Ramana. We'll commence today's evening Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. I'll be reading from Guru Vachaka Kovai from the chapter Meditation on the Truth, and the subject blessed by Bhagavan is Rejecting as Not This. Verse 671. I am not the fleshy body, the prana, the vital breath that animates the body, the organs of action and cognition, nor the mind, the intellect and the ego, nor am I the form of nescience, sleep, that is filled with dense, latent vasanas, and which is devoid of action and objects of perception. Bhagavan is taking us, as he took the coaster, into the deep of the heart by the path of rejecting everything as not this, not this. Often our sadhana, we also want to experience self like any other object because of the habit of being externalized attention. Whereas we are the self to whom all these objects appear and disappear, including this thought, the thoughts, including the thought of rejecting as not this, not this. When we let go everything, the thought-free state, then what remains is that pure consciousness, existence, bliss, the self. So Bhagavan is asking us to reject everything, not even hold it, give any reality to it, but to look at the one to whom all of this is happening and get back to the self. And for that, Bhagavan has given us the path of Atma Vichara, because every moment when we are externalized, then we are holding to some thought form, some idea, some concept. So, Atma Vichara is the direct path to let go. With every rising thought, no matter what kind of thought it is, whether it is good, bad, ugly, spiritual, non-spiritual, all we need to understand is it's happening in the non-dual state. It's happening in the duality, And to get back to the non-dual state, we have to let go all the objects. And therefore, all these thoughts have to be questioned. To whom is this? And when we do that, the natural answer is it is for me, not for somebody else. Thereupon, when we inquire, who am I then? What do I really refer to as I? or where from this thought I rises within me. When I try to go to the source of the I, then the mind which was externalized becomes internalized. It has rejected all of it and is now going for the source with the question, who am I? And with the grace of the Master, it abides in that existence consciousness bliss by repeatedly diving within with the inquiry. Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to remain at the source, to remain at the self. With immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 10 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana. We now have the sharing by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande on the selection from Bhagavad Gita by Bhagavan.
Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Shantakaram Bhujagashayanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasudrisham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmi Kantam Kamalanayanam Yogiradhyanagamyam Vande Vishnum Bhavabhayaharam Sarvalokaikanaatham. Om. By Bhagavan's grace, we are doing manana on the 28th verse of Bhagavad Gita Sara. This 28th verse is from chapter 6. The verse number is 26. The verse goes like this. Yato yato nischarati manaschanchalamastiram tatasthato niyam yaitad atmanaivam vasham nayet. So what is being said here, the mind, which is by nature is wavering and unsteady, should again and again be drawn back from whichever objects towards which it runs and should be brought under the control of the self alone. So all sadhana is all about that only. So on account of the conditioning of the mind in the past several births to like or dislike of the various objects of the world and the consequent attraction or revulsion towards them, generating attachment, enmity, hatred, jealousy, etc., which is all the lower mind things. The mind is always flitting from one object to another and is thus by nature wavering and unsteady. As many times as the mind may run towards the worldly objects, it should be brought back again and again and the attention turned towards the self. This repeated withdrawal is to be done by making the mind understand as to what the ultimate reality is and how all the objects are mere appearances, and also by cultivating the attitude of dispassion, vairagya, towards those objects. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that it is the nature of the mind to wander. One must bring one's thoughts to bear on God. By long practice, the mind is controlled and made steady. The wavering of the mind is a weakness arising from the dissipation of its energy in the shape of thoughts. When one makes the mind stick to one thought, the energy is conserved and the mind becomes stronger. The Gita method is only one for it. Whenever mind stays away, bring it back to bear on meditation. So what are the two important things on this? One is abhyasa and vairagya are necessary. Vairagya is the absence of diffused thoughts. Abhyasa is the concentration of one thought only. So the one is the positive and the other is the negative aspect of meditation. The mind can be studied only by strengthening it. The mind grows strong by satsanga, the company of the wise. So we are constantly talking about Bhagwan and having satsanga is a very important aspect because it helps us. Having made ask the meditator to slowly but surely practice meditation, Sri Krishna elaborates on what exactly is the aspect of meditation that needs constant practice and repetitions. Because all of us try to do self-enquiry, all of us are trying to do meditation. We have learned different types of meditation and different types of methods of quieting the thoughts. So he urges that the meditator to check the mind as and bring it back to the thought. The meditator has to do this again and again, and each time the mind strays, it is one of the most practical shlokas about meditation. So this shloka is primarily on meditation, on how to meditate. As we practice meditation, we begin to appreciate the speed at which the mind moves from one thought to another. This is, in all our sadhana, we would have recognized this, that the mind seems to go very fast. For example, let's say that the thought of taking a 1 week vacation enters the mind. It then leads to a chain of thoughts. First, the mind makes a list of all our favorite vacation spots. Then it calculates how much each place will cost. Then it will visualize what each of these places looks like. It might also bring us memories of past vacations. The mind has thought of all this within seconds. Within seconds, all this happens. By the time we are aware that the mind is thinking like this, it has strayed far away from the object of meditation. So the object of meditation is the self, but just by have a single thought, let us have a holiday. Mind has gone into so many thoughts, hundreds of thoughts. The meditation with regards to our thoughts during meditation, we have to cultivate this vigilance as a habit. We have vigilant habits in other parts of our life. For men, for example, check their face daily for any stray hairs just after shaving. Similarly, we should be vigilant about stray thoughts during meditation. The constant practice of removing stray thoughts is called abhyasa. So the mind loves to stray. See, the nature of the mind is it loves to stray, it loves to go out, to stray towards thoughts, other objects, people, and situations that we have given importance to. Abhyasa helps us to diminish our importance towards stray thoughts. Sri Shankaracharya, in his commentary, gives us a wonderful tip with regard to abhyasa. Each time we encounter a stray thought, we should instantly analyze it like a scientist. Okay, like a scientist, we should analyze it. We should inspect each thought and say, it is nothing but the name and form on top of the eternal essence. So very important. I'll read it again. Each time we encounter a stray thought, we should instantly analyze it like a scientist. We should inspect each thought and say, it is nothing but name and form on top of the eternal essence. If the thought is about name and form only, then it is not real. It does not have any sattvatva, satyatva, and it is not real. It is not important. So I should not go after that. So this is very important. As part of our sadhana, what happens is, we will want to do self-enquiry. Self-enquiry is the shortest part of the self. But what happens is sometimes thoughts keep coming, coming stronger and stronger and stronger. So what happens? Bhagavan says is, you, like a scientist, analyze the thought and say, what is the essence of the thought? And you will realize it is most of the time it is the name and the form. And the name and the form is not real. So it is not going to take us to the reality. So it is not important. So I should not go after it. Furthermore, if the very same thought occurs the next time, we should inspect it and say, oh, I have already determined that this thought is not important to me. If we do so each time that same thought comes, we develop dispassion or vairagya towards it. So this is, see, if you look at your thoughts, they're all packaged in a certain manner. They go in a certain method. For example, somebody may be think of music, somebody may be thinking of drama, somebody may be thinking of holidays, somebody may be thinking of, so it is a pattern. If you really see your thoughts, there is a constant pattern which is happening. So what is being said here is, I've already determined that this thought is not important to me. So if for example, I'm crazy for cars, and now there's a season where there's so many new cars coming out in the market. Now, every time there's a new car comes, I feel like going and taking a test drive. But what happens is, I have to analyze this thought and say, oh, this is another car that is coming out, and the effect is the same for me, that it is going to drive me away from the self. It's going to make me detached from the self and attached to material objects. So I have to inquire and say that this is not important for me. Why? Because I've already, the same thought comes again, we develop dispassion. We will suddenly develop dispassion or vairagya for it. Only then my meditation will work properly. Once you start, see, mind is one thing, you have to make it your best friend. If you think you can control the mind, you are sadly mistaken, because you can't control the mind. You have to make it a good friend of yours. When you make it a good friend of yours, what happens? It listens to you. So a friend, if you have a good friend, he'll listen to you, and he will do things that you want it to do. So that's the way to do it. Initially make it a good friend of yours, and it starts listening to you. And then what happens? It's like a dog. When you get a puppy in your house, you slowly train it. And after some time, the dog will start listening to you. Your mind is also like that. So important thing is, we have to keep doing it. And if we follow this technique, the mind will eventually become quiet, prashanta. It'll become quiet. And that's the purpose of all whatever we're trying to do, self-enquiry, meditation, is to quieten the mind. When the mind gets quiet, the world gets quiet, and you are constantly in bliss. So you want constant, like in the self-enquiry book, what everybody wants to be happy all the time. It's not happy sometimes. Everybody wants to be happy all the time. So if you want to be happy all the time, then it's important to do self-enquiry, go inwards. If you can also surrender to Bhagwan and say, everything that happens inside and outside is your will, and nothing is my will. When you have no will of yours, everything is God's will, then everything is perfect. Whatever is happening, whatever this body is right now saying is perfect, because it is the will of Bhagwan. And whatever the other jivas who are listening is also perfect, because that is also the will of Bhagwan. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Thanks.
We now have the sharing on Atma Vichara Padalam Devi Kalotram by Dr.Kala Rengasamy. She has sent us the sharing verse.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the grace of Bhagwan, we are sharing on Devi Kalotra Jnanachara Vichara Padalam. In the last satsang, we learned that this Kalotra Vidya Tattva Jnana is so great and easy to understand. As Bhagwan says in our Atma Vittai Kirtanam, Ayye Ati Sulabham, Anma Vittai, Ayye Ati Sulabham. Even by knowing this Kalotra Vidya Jnana, and if one does not realize the truth, இக்கால ஞானத்தால் யாவர்க்கு ஞானந்தான் உள்ளின் அணுகாதோ அன்னோர்க்கு, for them. Even if crores and crores of books are read and sastras are learned, it is not going to help him in attaining moksha. So, in the next stanza, Bhagavan says, Adanale, nirpayanai, ayyamenal indri. Adanale means, if a person is not able to attain mukti, even after following what is said in Kalotra Jnana, believe it is not possible for him to realize the truth. So, be firm in this marga and there is nothing to fear at all. Without thinking anything other than this margam, have complete faith in this Jnana Marga without doubt. I have seen some of my students who used to lament when they join in the first year of graduation. They used to say, Madam, I don't know why I have chosen economics. Is it worth? My friends in BCom say, I must have taken a BCom. For such students, I used to say, once you have joined, then please concentrate in that only. Then only you can come up in life. Only when concentration in study is there, you have taken up, then you can come up in life. So, for attaining anything, concentration and faith in that is very, very important. Bhagavan says, don't get afraid at all. Don't doubt the path that you have chosen. Nirpayanai, ayyamenal indri. One person sowed a mango seed. He started doubting. Will this seed come out with leaves? If it comes out with leaves, will it grow into a tree? If it at all it become a tree, will flowers come? Will all the flowers grow up into mangoes? Or some flower will be blown away by the wind? Okay, if they become mangoes, will all the mangoes ripe? Imagine, even if all mangoes ripe, will I be able to harvest all the mangoes? Or if some thieves will come and take them away? Alright, if no thief come in, will I be able to eat them? Or my health will not permit me or allow me to eat them? So many doubts that a man had, but the irony is that he has just sown the seed, that's all. So Bhagavan says, you need not have any doubt whether you realize the truth or not. You can just follow Kalotra Jnana Vicharam. Moreover, he says, Yadanilume Ichai Ilanai in the next stanza. The sadhakas must not have any icha, any desire for worldly things. If one goes behind worldly things, automatically the likes, dislikes, wants and don't wants, discrimination all creeps into it, and because of ubadi. Okay, I am done with all worldly things and have icha in mukti only. Will that be okay? I'll tell you an incident in Bhagwan's life. One of a lady devotee came to Bhagwan and said, Bhagwan, I am going to stay here for 1 week. I have no wants in the world except mukti. Before I leave this place, please give me that mukti. Bhagwan simply smiled. After some days, she came to Bhagwan. There are only 2 days left over, Bhagwan, for me to leave this place. I asked you to give you mukti. Bhagwan again smiled. After 2 days, she came with her luggages and prostrated and said, Bhagwan, I am going to leave now. I need only mukti. Please give me that. Bhagwan again smiled. With a heavy heart, she left. After that, Bhagwan opened his mouth. He said, his mukti is like food which can be packed and given to all the devotees who leave this place. When the icha or the wish to attain mukti is removed, What is left? Mukti only. That's what he said. Even in Aksharamanamalai, Bhagavan says, Moham tavirthu un mohamai vaittumen moham dirayam Arunachala. Hey Arunachala, you have done a beautiful thing. You made me withdraw myself from the worldly desires and made me to aspire for you only. But I know very well, even when that wish for attaining you is out of me, then only I can realize the truth. Only after overcoming that wish also, I can realize you. You have to help me to overcome that desire. Bhagavan requests Arunachaleshwar like this on our behalf. Tirumular says, Asayarumin, Asayarumin, Isanodayinam Asayarumin. Get rid of all the desires, even if it is a desire to attain Ishvara. Then one can realize Mukti. So in Devi Kalotra verse, Bhagavan says, Idilume Ichai Ilanai. That means including the desire to attain Ishvara. When practicing Jnana Marga, one must do it with the great Shraddha. That's what in the next stanza, Bhagavan says, Idayathir nat siraddayode. Idayathir nat sraddayode. Sraddayadeyam ashraddaya adeyam. Even Upanishad teaches that. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We now have the sharing based on Ramana Chatvarimshat by Ujwal Jagadeesh.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the verses of Ramana Chatvarimshat written by Ganapati Muni and compiled in this format by Bhagavan Shri Ramana Maharshi. Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam Yatina madipena ushagralasan matina dhritina shita chitta bhuva yatina madipena ushagralasan matina dhritina shita chitta bhuva laharim pramadhasya sada vahata nihatantara shatrava samhatina laharim pramadhasya sada vahata nihatantara shatrava samhatina ramana ninda patiya padedihudi bhuvana ramana ninda patiya padedihudi bhuvana yatinayakanu ushagrachittanu chaladhi manadi nashipanu chittajananu yatinayakanu ushagrachittanu chaladhi manadi nashipanu chittajananu anandalahariya sada pravahipa Antarangadi janipa ripugala samharipa Anandalahariya sada pravahipa Antarangadi janipa ripugala samharipa. Ganapati Muni sings of Ramana as the one who destroys the chittaja, the one who is born of the mind, that is the Kamadeva. And we see that Bhagavan himself sings of himself, that is himself as Arunachala, and he sings Kamariyai Yendrum Anbaral Gatitida Padaginrar. Oh Arunachala, you are called the Kamari by the great devotees. Muktaka Swami also says, when I came and I saw your beautiful, glorious face, I saw the sight, the kachi of the Kama getting killed by your glance, which is so cool. And Sadhu Swami also says, Kripa Drishtige Kama Vinasha Karunakara Guru Ramanesha. By your Karuna Drishti, all the desires, the Kama is destroyed. Such a compassionate one you are, O Ramana. And KVS Mama, KV Subramaniam, he sings of Ramana as Kamanai Vendravane Kalanik Kalane Namarupam Kadanda Paratparane Ramana. So all the devotees have sung of you, Ramana, as Kamari. But Ramana himself writes a question to this title given to Arunachala Ramana. He says, Kama Mardananendu Hogaluvaru Ninna Adari Sandeha Badisi Hudanna Kama Mardananendu Hogaluvaru Ninna Adari Sandeha Badisi Denanna Ni Kama Vairiyane Ninna Bhaktaranu Ni Kama Vairiyane Ninna Bhaktaranu ಬಾಧಿಸುವ ಹೇಗೆ ಪೀಡಿಸುವ ಹೇಗೆ ಬಾಧಿಸುವ ಹೇಗೆ ಪೀಡಿಸುವ ಹೇಗೆ ಬಲಶಾಲಿಯಾದರು ಆ ಕಾಮ ಹೇಗೆ ಬಲಶಾಲಿಯಾದರು ಆ ಕಾಮ ಹೇಗೆ. In the verse in Navamanimalai, Ramana himself asks Arunachala the self, Oh Arunachala, the great devotees, they call you as Kamari, the one who has destroyed the Kama with his third eye. But I have a doubt. If you are the Kamari, Arunachalesha, if you are the Kamari, then how is it that for those devotees like me who are surrendered to your lotus feet, who are holding on to this fortress of your feet, how is to us that these Kama stealthily enters our mind and creating havoc? Is it right? If he is Kamari, he should be afraid of you and not enter into our hearts, the devotees of you, O Kamari. But how is it that the Kama is so powerful that he is entering your supreme fort of your feet? G. Kameshwar Mama, in the commentary of Navamanimalai, which was published in Ramana Way, he says the scholars say that if you split the words differently, this same verse can give one more meaning. And that meaning says that, oh Ramana, Arunachala Ramana, Arunesha, you are Kamari, and all the devotees praise you as that. And I completely believe in it because that is true. But if you say that I am Kamari, if you ask me that, are you worthy to be Kamari? Then how can I say so? How can I be worthy of that title? Because even the great ones, even however strong they are, however courageous they are, even they cannot fight the arrows of Kama which create such difficulties. So it is only by your help that I can get away from the Kama. So before these arrows of Kama or arrows of desires come and they capture me and draw me to the fortress of Kala, the time, and before I am drawn into the death, before this happens, filled with desires, oh Ramana, you enter my heart, you enter my mind and destroy this fear in me, destroy the desire in me, says Ramana in the Navamanimalai. And in this very same verse, when Ganapati Muni says Ramana is Kamari, he also says, how did he destroy all these desires? He says, Matina Dhritina. It is by the determination and steadfastness alone we can destroy the Kama. We see that in our the Puranas, the Kama is said to have born out of Vishnu. Vishnu, who is Parabrahma. From this Parabrahma himself, who is the self, the Kama also is risen. He also takes birth. And we see that in our scriptures, the desire for mumukshutva, the desire for liberation is said to be very, very rare and said to be very, very wonderful. And Ramana himself in Ramana Gita says, for a one who desires the highest, one who desires has the Kama to attain the highest supreme state, that state where there is only Ananda, which is unalloyed by any fear, any thought, any desire. If one desires that state, then for him to know oneself is the only paramount duty. But why is that this very same Kama, which was born out of Vishnu, had to be destroyed by that very same Paramatma Tattva manifest as Shiva? When we wonder on this question, I was wondering that we should have a desire that we should attain liberation. And when we are in the process, and Ramana says, what is the path of liberation? How do we get to that supreme state? Is to know yourself. When we are in the process of knowing ourselves, with turning within and questioning ourselves, who am I? The Kama arises as little manifestation of various desires. I am meditating. Soon I am going to get liberated. Soon I am going to have this glorious state. All these little desires which rise in us, manifest us, and these little desires has to be destroyed. And that can be destroyed only by the help of the Kamari, Shiva, by holding on to that self, which is Shiva. Through determination alone, we can win over this, the Kama, the desire. Sadhu Swami says, காணும் உலகை நினைப்பதால் கடவுள் நினைவு போய்விடும் வேண்டும் உறுதி முதலிலே விரும்பி தியானம் பண்ணுவாய். If the thought of world arises, thought of God just vanishes. Determination is needed to begin. Meditate with great eagerness. Ramana says, if one with great determination, one with great eagerness turns within with surrender and with inquiry into knowing your own true self, at that time all the desires are killed. The chittaja is completely destroyed and you are given that very state what Ramana was ever abiding in. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the grace of that self manifest to us as the very dear Ramana, we are meditating on the Ramana Ashtottara Shatanamas, the 108 names on Bhagavan, composed by Vishwanatha Swami, and we are on the Nama, the name, Om Bhuminatha Sthalotthitaya Namaha. One who rose, one who was Udaya, Utita, who was born, who rose in the place of, in the sacred space of Bhuminatha or Bhuminatheshwara. And we had a small glimpse of the story of the Sthala Purana of Bhuminatha. One part of the Sthala Purana, we looked upon how the king of that place, he was roaming the entire world, or rather running away from his sins, and he arrived at Tiruchuri without even knowing that this place is a sacred place. The moment he set foot or in Tiruchuri, Brihannala was absolved of all his sins, and then he became a great devotee of Shiva. And to help him, to help his people, Shiva actually absorbed the waters of a great deluge and therefore was called the protector of the earth or Bhuminatha. We also saw that Bhuma Devi came to him for purifying herself, and by having a dip in the sacred tank at Tiruchuri, the Trishula Tirtha, she became purified, and therefore, as he helped her to regain her original aspect or original awareness of her own purity, which never went away according to him, to regain that awareness, she had to bathe in the Trishula Tirtha of Trishulapura or Tiruchuri. And because she became purified here, the Kshetra was called the Bhumi Natha Kshetra. There is another event which is associated with the history of Tiruchuri, which is the reuniting of the sage Gautama and with his wife Ahalya. And after he had cursed Ahalya to become a rock, Ahalya in turn cursed by her spontaneous word, she cursed Gautama, and she says, "O foolish sage," without thinking about why this has happened or how this has happened, you have simply cursed me. So by the moment she says, "O foolish sage," the mind of Gautama becomes confused and befuddled, because she is such a great tapaswini that her words are immediately effective. And then Gautama roams and comes to the south, and he does penance, but he is not able to regain his clarity of his mind. So these two we find in our own sadhana, that there are these two aspects. One is becoming like a stone, where we do not have that love, the life force, and the sadhana is absolutely mechanical, dull. It just goes on. I mean, we do not have any awareness even of how the sadhana is progressing, or it could refer even to the state of laya, manolaya. When the mind goes into laya, it's like being a stone, it's like being jada. So one curse in our sadhana could be that when the mind is very wayward, when the mind is running after many things, we think that quietening the mind is the answer. We say, just keep quiet. We tell it to keep quiet. And if it is simply quiet, like a dull quietness, of what use would it be? So Bhagavan says, Mauniyai kalpol malaradirindal maunamidamo arunachala. So Ahalya was cursed to be like a rock. And what was Gautama cursed with? He was cursed with absence of clarity, a confused mind. The mind is not able to focus. On the one hand, it could be totally dull. On the other hand, it could be active but unable to focus. This is how the two aspects of the mind, the great Gautama and Ahalya, had become. And then Gautama Muni came to Tiruchuri. The moment he set foot in Tiruchuri again, his mind became clear, and he prayed to Lord Shiva to give him darshana as Lord Nataraja. He asked for the cosmic vision, the vision of the cosmic dance. And at Tiruchuri, he was given that vision of the cosmic dance of Nataraja. And that is the Sahaja Sthiti, the awareness of the cosmic dance of Nataraja, is being steadily aware of the self, which is immanent in all things and transcends everything, which includes, Bhagavan says, describing his own enlightenment, he says, the self includes and transcends the body. So this awareness of the dancing Lord came to Gautama, and he and Ahalya were reunited at Tiruchuri. It is the reunion of the self with the pure mind, and there is the moving, the sahaja nishtha, the moving in the manifestation from the bliss of the self, and the awareness that everything is permeated by the self and the self alone. And this experience also happened at Tiruchuri. We can say because Bhagavan gives us this state of Sahaja experience, he has chosen to be born at Tiruchuri because he quells the pralaya, the deluge of the mind rising his thought upon thought with his self-enquiry Trishula, and makes our mind pure like the Trishula Tirtha. He has been born at Tiruchuri. Or we can say that because he purifies this bhumi or the body which has become sullied by, which is actually a pure vehicle only. It has no impurity in itself. It is always pure. It's ever pure. But what is it that makes the body impure? It is the ego when it lays claim to the body and says, "This is I," then it becomes impure. So, this ego, by destroying this ego, the bhumi, the earth, and the bhumi, the body, becomes a pure receptacle of the Supreme, as Bhagavan showed in his life how he was. In fact, Humphrey says God was radiating terrifically through his body, which was like a corpse, he says, to the extent that the body was actually like a corpse, he says. But God was radiating terrifically through him, which is to say that is the purpose of the body. Therefore, Bhagavan has been born in the Bhuminatha Kshetra, and he is the Bhuminatha himself. He is the Lord of this body. He shines as I in the heart. And so he is the Bhuminatha. And therefore he was born in the Bhuminatha Kshetra. And then when we meditate on that Nama, we also understand that Bhagavan is born in the Kshetra of the Bhuminatha. He is born where the Bhuminatha Sthala is there. The Bhumi, if we say, is the whole body. Where is the Bhuminatha? The Bhuminatha is the heart, which says I. That's why Bhagavan also says that Bhuminatha Sthala or Tiruchuri is the dance of Shiva. Anavaradam Anbudayartam aham ahalamal anavaradam inbudayartam midal enavendrum irichuyal. So it is the heart. So where is Bhagavan born? Where is Ramana born? Where is the self-awareness born? It is born in the heart. It is not born in the body idea. It is not born in any of the other locales in the body, but in the very sacred location of the spiritual heart. Therefore, he is Bhumi Natha Sthalotpitaya Namaha. He is born where the Bhuminatha resides, in the heart. And if we turn to him in the heart, if we seek his birth in the heart, if we seek the birth of the Aham Spurana in the heart, we see the presence of the real Ramana within us and become united with him by his immense grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We'll now have the chanting of verses of Aksharamanamalai, and that will be followed by the Ashtottara Puja, the chanting of verses of Aksharamanamalai. The chanting will be by Radha, and I will be joining her today.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Arunachala Nina Agameni Nepavara Hatai Vera Rupai, Arunachala.
அழகு சுந்தரம் போலகமும் நீயுமுற்று அபிநமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா. அகம் புகும் தீர்த்துன் நககுகை சிறையாய் அமர்வித்ததென் கொல் அருணாச்சலா. ஆருக்காவனை ஆண்டனை அகற்றிடு அகிலம் பழித்திடும் அருணாச்சலா. இப்பழி தப்புனை ஏல் நினைப்பித்தார் இனி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சலா. ஈன்றிடும் மன்னையிற் பெரிதருள் புரிவோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா. உன்னையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுளத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா. ஊர் சுற்றுளம் விடாதுன்னை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சலா. என்னை அழித்திப்போதென்னை கலவாவிடு இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சலா. ஏன் இந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறர் இழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா. ஐம்புல கள்வர் அகத்தினில் புகும்போது அகத்தில் நீலையோ அருணாச்சலா. ஒருவனா முன்னை ஒழித்தவர் வருவார் உன் சூதே இது அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமணமாலை வாழி. We now have the Ashtottara Puja to Bhagavan. This will be performed at the Ramananjali Meditation Hall at the Heritage Center by Ujwal Jagadeesh, and the Ashtottara will be chanted by Vaibhavji and Prarthana and Uma and Ashwini, and the Aarti song will be sung by Revathi Shankar.
I think Vaibhavji is not there. Shall I chant?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ujwal.
Bharadva.
Visible? Not visible.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir. Sorry. You can.
भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावली अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशि यस्योर्मि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं दुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। ॐ महासेन मुहुंसेन जाताय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः। ॐ गुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः। ॐ महौजसे नमः। ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः। ॐ जगद्हितावताराय नमः। ॐ श्री भूमिनाथस्थलोद्धिताय नमः। ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंशाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः। ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः। ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थलीलब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रतीये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ शूतवाक्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ शूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणात्मिकाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजदचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ मुद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ विदुपदान्वेषिणे ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः।
ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचलोद्भूतस्कन्धाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिह्नसंशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः ॐ सौम्याय नमः ॐ आत्मवते नमः ॐ सर्वावलिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः ॐ महाभागाय नमः ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः ॐ विनताय नमः ॐ विनुताय नमः ॐ विप्राय नमः ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः ॐ मौनेन स्वार्थबोधकाय नमः ॐ हृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः
भगवते नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्य तत् दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संघिये दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संघिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।